Anytime, any day. Why not right now? Stop looking up to your boss and start being your own boss. Don't work for paychecks. Work for dreams with no regrets. This is Cracking the Entrepreneur Code. If you have the passion, we'll create the blueprint. Now, your host. You know him from his 7 tips to build the business you always wanted, and now you're about to hear a lot more. Jack H.M. Wong.
Welcome to the other episode of Cracking the Entrepreneur Code. I'm your host, Jack Wong. So what should I talk about in this episode? I want to talk about this word, and this word is very important. And guess what it is? It is a word that starts with letter R. Responsibility. You are correct. Responsibility. This is a word that probably differentiates you from being a good entrepreneur to a great entrepreneur. And why do I say that? How many of you actually committed to yourself to make it work in this business? So when the moment you decide to leave the corporate world, to decide to become an entrepreneur, are you responsible for taking your own action? Now, I've been hinting this in the last few episodes about your little voice, about the fear that you might have. But now, let me get into a deeper level of conversation with you. So think about the word responsibility. So how many of you actually can define responsibility? Okay, so let's break this word into 2 parts. How many parts? 2 parts. Great. So the word responsibility represents your ability to respond. I repeat, it is your ability to respond. Now, I have learned long time ago, a formula called E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals your outcome. So this formula is something that I've learned from my mentor, my good friend Adam Khoo from Singapore in one of the programs called Patterns of Excellence. So ERO basically talks about the fact that you can't control an event. When it's raining today, you can't say to the sky, can you please not rain because I need to go from point A to point B. You basically can't stop the rain, actually, right? So the event is given, so there's nothing you can control. However, what you can control is your response to the event. And your response to the event will give you a different outcome. So if you put this into perspective, let me give you this example. Suppose today you need to meet a client by driving to a shopping mall, and it takes 10 minutes from your house to the shopping mall. Okay, so 10 minutes under normal situation. And guess what? Today it rains. It is a rainy day, and therefore you are caught on the traffic. You are caught on the road because there's a huge traffic jam. And what happened is that you end up being late for this appointment. And your client wasn't very happy because you are late. So what can you do? How would you react in that situation? Number one, some people might say, you know what? I want to blame the sky because it rains today. You know what? If it's not raining today, I won't be late. You see, that's what we call blaming other people. As you can hear, when I'm doing this episode, the sky is actually, it is actually a raining day. And you just hear a loud thunder, boom. So you know what? That's a very interesting environment because I know many of you may have this habit of blaming other people, blaming other things. So what happens is that you do not take up the responsibility. You are not held responsible for being late. Some people might say, hey, you know what? I am at fault. I should have done this, meaning that I should have gotten house earlier. If I have gotten my house earlier, let's say half an hour or 1 hour earlier, I wouldn't be late. It's my fault. So instead of blaming other people, what have you done? You are blaming yourself. So what we call, you are playing a victim mode. Okay? So You can divide groups of people into two kinds right now. One is what we call the blamers. They like to blame other people except themselves. There's another group of people, we call them the victims. They like to find fault on their own instead of finding fault from other people. So which is better, a blamer or a victim? Think about it. Which is better, a blamer or a victim? Well, the answer is not true. Both are not useful. Because responsibility, as I said earlier, the definition of responsibility is your ability to respond. Okay? So there's no point of blaming other people or finding fault on yourself. The key lesson is really what can you do at this point in time in front of the client. So if I were to choose to explain to the client, I'm sorry, I'll apologize for being late. And I promise the client next time if we were to have the meeting, I'll make sure I'll be on time. So you make a promise to a client, and if client really understands, perhaps your client will let it go. Perhaps if you offer something in return for a client waiting for you, perhaps the clients will let it go. So think about at this point in time, what is the thing that you have to do to deal with this particular situation? Is there anything you can do within your control so that the client will be okay, at least emotionally? Okay? And the next thing is, how could you make it better next time? So in this incident, it is like, how could you avoid being late next time when it rains? Perhaps you will step out of the house half an hour earlier. You see, there's another thunder right now. Perhaps you might say, well, I'm not going to drive because I know there will be traffic jam on the road. Instead, I will take a public transport, underground transport, so that there won't be any jam. Perhaps I'll make sure I carry umbrella. Or you know what? I'll meet my client elsewhere. So there are so many alternatives you can pick to make sure that you could be doing it better next time. So that's what I mean by being responsible. And you know what? In business, you have to take 100% responsibility. As a man in my family, I'm taking 100% responsibility. And as a professor in university, I'm also taking 100% responsibility for my students' success. Of course, at the same time, I will tell my students, you guys will also be 100% responsible for your own revision. Okay, so what we say when we come to the word responsibility is not about, okay, I'm saying to all of you, I declare I am responsible for what I'm doing. It's not about that. It's your ability to really respond to a particular event, knowing that the event is something you can't control. It's your ability to respond to that particular event that gives you an outcome. The outcome might be useful to you, may not be useful to you. So if it's not useful to you, how could you do it better? Remember a while ago in one of my episodes, I talk about mistakes is money-making opportunities. So this is actually one of my points. When you make mistakes, what must you learn so that you can avoid making the same mistake again? So that is how you come up with this ability to respond, meaning that, okay, in order for me to avoid making the same mistakes in future, I must do this, I must not do that. So everything becomes a learning experience so that you will avoid making the same mistakes in future. Just like in business, remember, making mistake is okay because you will have to make mistakes anyway. But the thing is that you need to learn how not to make the same mistakes again, because that is, if you still make the same mistake again, then basically you haven't learned anything, isn't it? So my point once again is very simple. Acknowledge the fact that you can't control the event. So stop blaming other people, stop blaming yourself. Because if you are like that, you're giving up your power. Okay, you're giving up your energy. Second thing is really acknowledge the fact that you have the ability to respond. You have the ability of how you should respond to a particular event, and that will give you the outcome you need. And most importantly is acknowledge the fact that mistake is inevitable, but it is very critical to understand and learn how not to make the same mistake again in future. And that's what I mean by responsibility. Okay, so are you a responsible business owner? Would you believe that you will be responsible for your own success? How many of you realize that responsibility is such a great word and yet it's so important to our success? If you agree and if you think that your friends will agree with you, please share this podcast with them and let them know, explain to them what responsibility means to you and to them, so that sharing is caring. And if you believe that your friends, your loved ones will benefit from my message, ask them to subscribe to my podcast. If you have any questions, comment, I look forward to receiving them from you. And once again, as an entrepreneur, you have to be responsible for your own success. Stay relentless and be responsible. I'm Jack Wong. Thank you for listening to this episode of Cracking the Entrepreneur Code podcast. I'll see you next time. Bye.
To continue cracking the entrepreneur code, subscribe for more episodes and download the Amazon bestseller, Cracking the Entrepreneur Code, 7 Tips to Build the Business You Always Wanted at crackingentrepreneur.com. Learn more about author and host Jack H.M. Wong and book your 30-minute discovery session to overcome any professional challenge at jackhmwong.com/apply.